So in the previous video, we continued on the process of building the parse applications class, and we added some code to do some basic processing. And we saw on the screen just an example of how the XML parser that we're using, the code that's part and parcel of Android that comes with Android, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us and going through the file and manipulating it. So what we need to do now is finish off this process method so that we can actually start really extracting that data out that we need that ultimately will be displayed on the screen. So let's continue with that. So we talked about what the start tag does, and I'm just going to remove these logging messages now because they'll end up consuming quite a bit of space, which we probably don't want to take up in our log. And you'll see that there's going to be another way to show the data anyway. So at the moment, we've got a start tag, and that is basically looking for the entry tag. And if it finds that it knows we're part of an entry, and it creates a new object so that we can start storing that data. A very quick recap again. The entry relates to one of these entries within the actual XML file. So we're going to start working. So in other words, we're saying, are we in this entry? Okay, and likewise, the end tag, what it's meant to do, so it needs to close off depending on what we're going to do, whether we're in one of the fields that we're wanting to work with, it needs to start saving that. So we're going to get back to that shortly. But the other one that we need to add is at the moment we've got a start tag and an end tag, but we also need a text. And this is the actual text that we're extracting that's in those fields. For example, the artist name, we need to actually sign that somewhere. So to do that, we can type case, XML, pull parser, .text, and text again, as I said, is the actual data itself as opposed to the actual tags like entry and so forth. So we're going to type text value equals xpp.getText. So that's going to be the actual data itself. So we're actually storing that at that point, and we're going to be using that in the end tag code that we're about to add now. So what we need to do in the end tag is, and I've taken that comment out, but we need to do a few things. First, we need to do a test for if in entry, like so. So what that's saying is only if we're actually within the entry component of the XML file are we going to start doing any processing for the end tag. So in other words, any other end tags we are going to ignore. So all we really want to work with is the entry, but also the name, the artist, and the release date. So to do that, we obviously want to test first to see whether we're actually at the end of an entry. Now, if we've reached the end of an entry, what that means is we've already processed the name, the artist, and the release date. So we want to close that off and actually add that to our array. If you recall at the top, our array of applications. So we need to add it to the array at that point, to this one here, applications. So we'll do that first in the test. So we're going to put if tag name dot equals ignore case entry. So if we've reached the end of the entry, we can actually save the record. So it'll be applications.add, and it's going to be current record because that's the record we're working with. Then we need to set in entry to false. And that's telling us that the current record may not have been initialized. That's okay because we know we've definitely initialized it there. So that's more IntelliJ trying to be helpful to us. What we can do just to get around that, we can just put something like equals null there. And that should fix that error because as far as IntelliJ is concerned, it has actually been initialized, but it wasn't actually an error. It would have worked anyway. So what we said there is, okay, if we've reached the end of an entry, we're going to save the record, and then we're going to set in entry to false so that we can actually process another one. Otherwise, what would happen would be keep trying to add this record over and over again, which would cause an error. So that's if the tag name was equal to entry. We need to do a couple of other tests though, now one for each of the three fields. We're going to put else if tag name dot equals ignore case. And it's going to be name first, name. All we really need to do there is put current record dot set name. We're going to set it to text value. And recall text value was actually updated in the text area here. And that's all we need to do for name. And then we need to do the same for artist and release date. So put else if tag name dot equals ignore case artist. Current record dot set artist to be text value. Then else if tag name dot equals ignore case, and if it's release date, current record dot set release date text value. So that's it. And We haven't got any other else's. If you wanted to actually process any other field, you would add an extra line there, else if tag name equals and whatever the name of the field was. And just a confirmation again, entry, name, artist, and release date, these equate to the entries that are in here. So you have to get those names right. So if you decided you wanted to test processing another XML file, you would actually have to use the right names for that file. In this case, we're using the ones that are right for this XML file. So that's that done. And basically, at that point, we're actually done. We don't really need to do anything else. We've actually now written the code that is going to go through and go through that entire XML file and hopefully save all the data for us. So it does seem to be a bit of code, but trust me, compared to what you would normally have had to have done, you would have had to write sort of literally hundreds of lines of code to do what we've achieved there, because all the hard work has been done by this code here. The XML pool parser in particular, that's doing all the hard work of figuring out how to access and figure out what is a tag and grabbing the data and all that sort of stuff. All we're really doing is we're just looking at key events that are happening. In this case, the start of a tag, text, and an end of a tag, and then obviously the end of the document as well. And the rest has been done for us, which is pretty cool. So the other thing I'll do just before we finish off on this class, why don't we actually print out a little log, a little summary of what's actually been processed just before we do the return. So what we could do is just somewhere here, I'm going to put something like for application, app, applications. And what that means is go through each element that's in the array list. So that's in this list up here. And for each element, it's going to automatically create a new object called app, which is the app application object that's been created when we pass through the list of the within the XML file. Then we just want to print out something like log.d, and we'll put parse applications. And I'll put some asterisks there just so we're clear, we can see that, easily identify that in the log. Then we'll put something like, let's put name plus app.getArtist. We'll do the same for, oops, I had that in the wrong place, didn't I? So that should be get name, and the next one will be correct. That's going to be artist. And release date dot get release date. Oops, like so. So let's do that. Let's now run this application now that we've developed this other code and see whether with our loop now, we've actually got what we should have is a list of 10 entries. So I'm going to go back to our main activity and I'm going to right click that and run that. And run it. And I don't need to see what's on the screen at the moment until we've got some data that I'm going to tab over, and then I'm going to click on the parser. And did I not delete those? I thought I might have commented those out. Not sure why they're coming up again, but let's go back and actually have a look. I think that might have been actually that's the logcat from last time, so that's all right. Let's go back and click on parse XML file. And now we should see some different outputs. We go back again and have a look. And we've actually got an error here. It's coming up saying there's actually an error. So what we need to do is figure out what actually went wrong. And you can see the error. And this is relating to the exception. So if we click on parse applications line 56, that's telling us that the error was there. It's tag name equals ignore case entry. So it's having a problem probably with tag name, I'm guessing. Okay, just backtrack a little bit to this errors on the screen again, and then I'm going to go through and point out what the problem was. Okay, so we've got an error there. So in that case, remembering that when you're debugging, make sure you check here, because what you can do is you can get more information, because we can only see one line there, and we've actually got a filter on our log output, our logcat output, so it's only showing lines that have got the word parse application in them. So if I delete that for now, we get more information about what the error was. Okay, so looking at this, we've got an error, attempt to invoke virtual method on line 56. So if we just go over and have a look over there, we can scroll over. Okay, we'll go back and actually have a look at the code. So that's over here on line 56, which seems a bit bizarre. And actually, I can see what the error is. Now, this is an interesting one, very easy to miss. The problem there is I haven't added a break there. So what actually happened was, by not adding a break there, the code was going through and it was actually executing the XML parser.txt. And what it should have done is exited out of it, then moved on to go to the next section. But because I missed a break, what that meant was it automatically continued processing and went into this end tag section where it shouldn't have. And at that point in time, the text name, tag name didn't match, was actually set to null, and that's why we got the error. So by adding the break there, that should actually fix that now, because it should correctly exit. So that is a common error. So we'll add this back again, parse application. And let's actually try running it again, and hopefully it'll actually work this time. So we'll run it. We won't see any output on the screen because we've got the filter on, so that should clear, but then we should get some output once we actually run it. So we'll go back to our app, click on parse XML file, and go back, and we've now got our data. So that looks like it's working. So you can see we've got each entry now. There should be the name, the artist, and the release date. They're correctly going into the fields, and you can see we've got them all stored, and everything's working nicely. So that's pretty cool. So we're getting towards the end of the app now, but what we haven't yet done is we haven't actually shown it on the screen. We've shown it in our log, in our logcat, but let's write some code now to actually finish it off and actually get it working, actually showing on the screen. So to do that, it's actually not really that hard to do. We need to go back. So what we're going to do is we're going to get it to show here on the screen here. Let's just show it in a nice formatted way. So we're going to go back to our code and go back to main activity. So the place we want to add it is actually here within the actual on-click listener. So in other words, when the button is clicked, we want to actually get it to parse the XML, and then we want to show it on the screen. Now, depending on how long that parse application took, if you had tens of thousands of records to parse, you'd probably have to use another async task to do that. But in this case, we know that the XML file is small. It's only ever going to contain 10 records. It's going to be virtually instant, so we don't need to go to that trouble for this particular case. So what we've done is we've now processed it. We've got an object, got an array list containing all the applications ready to be put somewhere. But what we haven't yet done is actually show them on the screen. Now, you saw earlier in this section, we're able to use the set text method to actually add text directly to the screen using a text view. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. So we can't do something like, for a list view, list apps dot set text. We've got filter text, set text direction, set text alignment, but you can't directly add it as we've done in the past anyway. And if you think about it, that wouldn't work anyway, because we've actually got an entry, we've got an array that contains all these all 10 application objects anyway. So we need a way to actually get the data that's now in the array into the list view. Now, the cool thing about it is that Android allows you to do this quite easily by using the concept of an array adapter. So we're going to use a very simple example of that now, and in later videos, we'll be getting into more complexity in later course videos, and you'll see how to use this in a more advanced way. So next thing to do is I'm going to type array adapter, and the array adapter, I'm going to type the line out and then we'll go through it. Application, adapter, array adapter equals new array adapter, application objects. Now it needs some parameters, and the parameters we need to pass, we need a context. For now, the only thing you need to type for context is main activity dot this. I'm going to delete that on the screen there so we can see what we're typing. Next, it needs the actual layout. So a layout is a definition of what the layout's going to look like for each element within the list view. So it's sort of like a view within a view, because you've got the list view that contains all the elements, but then each element, it also needs to have its own layout. So we haven't actually developed that yet. So let's add that r.layout, list underscore item. Then lastly, it needs the list of the array containing the data to put on the screen. So the cool thing about that is that we've already got that. So we're going to type parse applications.get applications. That's our list of data that we've just parsed. So lastly, we're going to type list apps dot set adapter array adapter. So by just doing that code, what we've done is we've sort of said this is an adapter, and the adapter knows that the type of data we're going to be putting into the list view is an application. So the application objects. So what we need to do is we're going to pass the layout and then that array, and then everything else happens automatically. So in other words, the array adapter will go through the array and grab each item out of the array, and then enable us to actually, or then show that on the screen automatically, which is pretty cool. But time is ticking fast, so I'm going to stop this video here, and we'll come back and just finish off this application in the next video.